Live and direct, live and a date no jive.
Legalize it.
So how much can a koala bear? Koala bear, koala bear. Koala bear. Barry pulls a joint out of his pocket. Bill says, "Great, Barry, a reefer."
Hi, and welcome back. It's another episode of the Koala podcast. Sorry if I'm a bit hesitant. It's late at night. Bruce Caruso from Guernsey, who heads up a company called PD Trading Limited, and he's got his own shop called Greenery Tree, which we'll talk about a bit in a moment. I was introduced to Bruce by Simon from Jersey, who we spoke to a few weeks ago about what was happening in Jersey with regard to regulation and legislation that might come into play there. And Simon said, "Oh, you should speak to Bruce and we can find out what's happening over the road, so to speak." Bruce, welcome to the Koala podcast.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Give me a bit of a background on Guernsey compared to Jersey. How many growers? What's the retail? What's the regulation currently? What can you do and what can you not do?
It's pretty similar to how Jersey is currently, except Guernsey doesn't have any growers anymore.
Okay.
And as far as retail shops, there's two of us, me and another shop. But there are like corner stores that also sell some cannabis-based products as well.
And when you say cannabis-based products, are they CBD products with really low THC, or are you actually allowed to sell higher THC level products for people?
It's CBD, yes, with low THC. The way the law works here is similar to Jersey, where you can have up to 3% THC to the total CBD content, and which kind of allows you to have a more edible-based type market.
And is that sort of what we mean? I would term as an adult use purchase.
Yes.
So it does Guernsey have that same sort of medical setup where you can go to the doctor like you can in Jersey?
Yes, exact same kind of setup.
Okay. And I mean, how long has this been in play, and how was it decided? I know very little about the legislature of Guernsey, how big it is, how many people, how decisions are made. Can we talk a little bit about that and find out how we got to where we are?
So I personally moved here in 2020. So the CBD law here came into effect, I believe, somewhere between 2017 and 2018, which allowed for that 3% law. That was pushed by other companies that were starting to grow hemp here on island, or high CBD plants, I should say. Then when I got here in 2020, it was, I believe, around October of 2020 is when they started allowing medical here on island. And from then, it's kind of been a standstill. What we did see happen is in 2021, I headed up, I was here with another company at the time, but I headed up the shop here and started using that CBD law to bring edibles into the island. And that's where
so
the market...
you were importing edibles from another source?
Yes.
And where are they coming from? North America? Where are they coming from?
North America, yes. Because the law there, the farm bill there allows for basically the same type of products in the US that is allowed here in Guernsey. So it was easy to make that transition into being able to sell them type of products here and being able to purchase them.
And is that the same with the medicinal products? I don't like to call them products, but they are basically. Are they importing from Canada essentially medicinal high THC products, white label that they then just prescribe? And when you're in Guernsey, do you have to go to the doctor, or do they have telemedicine?
No, you go to the doctor. There's 2 or 3 clinics on island. So yeah, you would go see your doctor. It's usually about every 6 months or so, and kind of tell them how things are going, and then they can either adjust your dose and kind of go from there.
And in
Yeah.
terms, I mean, again, I should have done a little bit more research, but what is the population of Guernsey? Approximately.
It's about 65 to 67,000 or so.
Okay, so it's not a small amount of people. I mean, do you find, I mean, are you fair? You've got two retail outlets, let's call them. Are you fairly busy with people? And I presume we're talking, is it 18 plus or 21 plus?
It's 18 plus, which that actually comes into place, I believe, in March, because there hasn't been actually an age limit since the law came into effect. So we've been kind of policing ourselves.
Right, so self-regulation, which is always
self-regulation. Yeah,
the best way anyway, isn't it?
Big signs on the front of my door, 18 plus, we're going to card you. So yeah, just making sure that nobody under 18 is getting anything. But that now is actually becoming law in March. I believe it's March.
And is Guernsey trying to basically have, your senses, when I spoke to Simon, they're looking for a certain type of regulation that the government controls the market, and in a small population, it doesn't seem a particularly bad idea as long as they know what they're talking about. Is Guernsey trying to do the same thing? Because obviously at the moment, it sounds as though you've got a medical and it's allowing for a very small private market. Do they want to control it in the same way that the Jersey government is looking to do that? Although it hasn't really been discussed how they would do that. They would probably let people like yourself exist anyway, wouldn't they?
From my experience with the talks that I've had with the deputies here, it doesn't appear that it's going to be a government ran program, which if it was, I would argue against that myself. We need to have locals being involved in this. We need to have an industry here that creates more jobs, that creates more tax revenue, and that's driven by the community, not by the government.
So you said, we started this off and you said there's no growers now in Guernsey. So is that the main issue to push the deputies on, is trying to create a fair licensing system so people can actually grow as SME growers of both low THC hemp within EU or UK rules, and I presume you're looking to produce something a little bit more for the medical. And is there any discussion about adult use allowing to have a higher THC content?
It's in discussion. I have been in discussion with deputies on creating a working group based around cannabis that would include deputies and industry professionals. I've also presented them with a pilot program, something that we can try doing here in Guernsey to start off adult use, kind of like what the Swiss had done with the pilot, but obviously making tweaks to gear it more toward Guernsey itself and how it would work for here. So that is in discussions, and that's been the most recent discussions. And I think we're supposed to be meeting next month to try to discuss it further and come up with a plan for the end of the year.
And when I spoke to Simon in Jersey, one of the issues is, of course, having to communicate with the Home Office in London, which is always a nightmare. Are you finding the deputies are slightly nervy about that, or they're not really particularly worried because you sort of walk down the road already without the sky falling in?
Well, to my personal understanding, if we were to try to move forward with, say, like a pilot program, that would be something, we would probably have to get permission from the Home Office and try to work with them on. However, there is things here that I believe that can be done now without the Home Office. A couple of those things is following Jersey, moving cannabis oil down to a Class B from Class A. Another one would be to do a half measure decriminalization, in the sense of If you do get caught with it and you're not a medical patient or the product isn't part of the CBD law, then it would be confiscated from you and seized and destroyed, but you get to walk away and go home.
Exactly. So you're not criminalized. You're not criminalized
Exactly.
in the process of possession simply. I mean, you've been there since 2020. I mean, what's your experience of what happened prior in terms of a black market existing in Guernsey? And has this, in a way, decriminalized the whole system? So actually, the black market in a small I mean, it's a really interesting test case, because does the black market just disappear or become completely negligible, or is it still at a similar level to what it was before?
I mean, when you go into a legalized market, the black market disappears 100%. Currently, from my understanding, before medical here on Guernsey, it was very hard to get flour. It was all imported hash.
I say it sounds like me growing up in the UK in the 80s. Cheap Lebanese hash that you couldn't smash with a hammer.
Yeah, exactly. I'm told they would get stuff, find bits of plastic in it, stuff like that. But that was all being brought in and imported into Guernsey through, cartels or drug dealers or whatever you want to call them. Fast forward to today, Customs has even come out and said that they're not finding cannabis products being imported illegally anymore, because now the black market on the island is all medical. And that has
people
become
retrading their prescriptions.
Yes, selling off some of their prescriptions. And to me, that's more of a systemic issue than a issue with the patient.
I mean, look, Australia is a perfect example on a much bigger scale of exactly the same problem.
Yep.
I mean, obviously, it's a much bigger market, and California is as well. So the black market hasn't decreased; it's probably grown slightly in the short period, whilst the demand goes up. But once things settle down, it really begins to stay, well, in Australia within that medical market, and in California within the medical and adult use market, simply because you're not taxed ridiculous sums. I mean, and I presume that's the killer issue in Guernsey, is they haven't decided to add 95% tax on everything.
Well, yeah, there is no tax on the medical or anything like that. But I mean, as we know, there's a lot of middlemen involved in packaging and clinics and so on and so forth. In my view, with the way the black market is now, it's all medical. But I see that as being more of a systemic issue more than a patient issue. And the reason I say that is because I think there's misprescribing involved as well, because the doctors prescribe you based on the categories indica and sativa. Indica and sativa do not correlate to effects. That refers to plant morphology and the structure of how the plant grows. What actually correlates to those effects are your terpene profiles. So it's more important to be looking at your terpene profiles than it is whether it's indica or sativa, right? Because let's be honest, everything nowadays is a hybrid, right? So that's the first issue, is that somebody may get prescribed an indica that's supposed to be nighttime, but it does the opposite, right? So what's that person going to do with it? They now that they have 60 grams of it, or however much they get, and it doesn't work for them, they're going to sell it on. That's one issue. The other issue is that when you go to the pharmacy to pick up your script, you have to pick up the whole script. So if somebody's on 60 grams, there's no help for people to be able to pay for this stuff. So now they're left with, do I buy my script or do I pay my rent? A lot of people are going to go ahead and buy that script because they know they can sell on the black market.
That's the issue in the UK.
Exactly.
So not on the NHS, they refuse to fund it, although they'll fund God knows what else.
Exactly. But you should be able to, as a patient, to be able to walk into the pharmacy and say, hey, I can only afford 20 grams this week. Can I come back next week for the other 20? You should be told yes. You know what I'm saying? Instead of being forced to have to pick it all up at once. So that the black market's been created by the way the system has been.
That system can't really be controlled by Guernsey, can it? That's a Westminster issue, isn't it?
I believe so, but I'm not 100% on that.
I mean, that's, it's the $1 million question is, you can have it, but we're going to make as much money as we can in tax revenue, but don't expect to be able to get it as a health product, just like, any other prescription, even though we
Mhm.
call it prescribing.
Yep. And like I said, again, like the states here, they nothing's taxed with medical. They're not making anything off of it. And that was another thing that I had proposed was going back to our CBD law. It's not the same law as it is in other countries. So that says to me that we have the ability to change that. So why don't we increase that 3% to 10% to this total CBD content, and let's put a tax on those products. And now you can actually start getting in at least some sort of revenue off of this, even before a full legalized market. So I think that would be, personally, I think that would be in the benefit of Guernsey.
Yeah, I should have asked this at the beginning, but in terms of the general public education and views of both adult use and medical cannabis in a small jurisdiction like Guernsey, how well informed are people? Or, I mean, do you feel that because you're in that sort of jurisdiction, it's easier to have these discussions and educate people simply because there aren't that many people you have to talk to about it?
Some people here are definitely well versed and definitely educated on the subject. Others still need education. A lot of people still believe in the reefer madness stuff. And now you got this push of psychosis and scrummeting.
Oh, yes. Well, they're loving the scrummeting at the moment.
Exactly.
I don't know if you remember back. It was, I think, 2018, 2019. There was a scrummeting epidemic in Colorado, which I noticed died pretty soon. But for some reason, the press have picked up on it again. A funny feeling it might have something to do with a Mr. Murdoch more than anything else.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, education is a problem, and as you hinted at before, the medical profession don't have that education to be able to prescribe efficiently enough. I mean, I'm sure they're doing as well as they can, but they can only teach themselves from Dr. Google, I should imagine.
True, true. But I guess not everything you find on the internet's accurate either. So
Well, I know. I mean, that's why I said that. I mean, education seems to be, for me anyway, doing this day in, day out, is the main missing thing that people haven't put proper investment into. I'm talking to universities about my stuff, which is law. It's not a law school on the planet, basically, who provide a proper course on, cannabis and law. Berkeley about the closest that you get. And that you can't be surprised by that, considering that university's geographical positioning and their history. But apart from that, there's very little going on that's serious. And the only education that I see is in the States that's designed to, teach not the brightest sometimes about this issue that you mentioned, the sativa versus etc. Because they're needing to sell the stuff, but they're not actually, they're training people to sell stuff, but they're not actually educating people to be able to talk, proper fashion with a bit of knowledge behind them.
I mean, and in no disrespect to any of the doctors prescribing, but they didn't go to school for 8 years to study cannabis, know. So it's very, very difficult for them to try to jump right into something and start prescribing something that they don't understand, So yeah, there definitely needs to be a lot more education, not only just for the community, but for, the medical professionals as well,
And are you feeling, I mean, look, we're almost sort of out of time already. Are you feeling, when I spoke to Simon, he felt pretty positive about what's happening in Jersey. Looking back, it's not been, could have been much worse. And looking forward, it looks, rosy's probably a bit of a positive word, but it looks as though there's common sense being employed, which you wouldn't apply to the mainland in the UK at the moment.
Don't know if he had told you, but there is recently they kicked the can down the road until the next election in Jersey now.
Oh, they have. No, well, I spoke to him before. I spoke to him just in early January when the announcement came out. Well, you just use my favorite phrase. I just put in my editorial about the the DOJ and the US Congress and kick the can down the road. Um,
Yeah.
Sometimes in a
Yeah.
nice fashion, lazy fashion, sometimes in a politically charged fashion to design an outcome that they want rather than what they're telling us that we might want, so to speak, or those people who feel that sort of cannabis should have a little bit more of an open approach to it. So that's interesting. So they're waiting. It's the standard thing. They're waiting for the election.
Yeah. I think the advantage that we now have in Guernsey is we just had our election last June. So we have a fresh set of deputies in.
And
You know, and
how long's the period in Guernsey? Is it like the UK,
I
5
think the
years?
next election's 2029.
Okay, plenty of time.
You know, and Simon emailed everybody to poll everybody in Guernsey, all the deputies, and then I was reaching out to them during the election to see who was, you know, in favor of cannabis reform. And out of all the deputies, it's about, I think it was 17 of them were positive on cannabis reform. It was 14, maybe it was, that was kind of indecisive, and then 6 or 7 just didn't respond. So those are good numbers. We have a lot of good deputies that are positive about cannabis reform. And it's just starting to get that conversation moving and start getting some action into place, which is what we're hoping to do with this working group, and get some good deputies on board with this, start discussing how we can implement and come up with a plan that I believe now will be debated at the end of the year, around December or January of next year. So hopefully, fingers crossed, 2027, we could be seeing some positive change here in Guernsey.
Yeah, well, hopefully there'll be a very good thing to see because, the only things I see in the UK are happening, in Jersey, Guernsey, and the Isle of Man, out on the fringe where Westminster can not worry about it too much, and then if anything goes wrong, they feel as though they won't get blamed. I don't understand the thinking at all because if you look at the issues on the mainland with regards to the black market, it's just it's out of control. But for some reason, that's a better option than having sensible conversations. So I'm very, very glad to see there's something happening in the British Isles, shall we say, that actually will engender some sort of positive change over hopefully a 24-month period.
Fingers crossed. I mean, I'd like to see Jersey and Guernsey, the whole Channel Islands combined, just working together on it, and implementing things together as we go along.
That would make more sense, wouldn't it? I mean, it seems a bit strange to be splitting it between two small jurisdictions when you could work together.
Exactly. And that's the way I come from America. So it's like when I come in, I see the Channel Islands as a whole, as opposed to like individual, so I think, working together, and trying to make, positive cannabis reform, I think is going to be ideal.
What happens on Alderney and Sark? I mean, are there people on Sark? I don't even know if there are people on Sark.
Yeah, Alderney, there's people in Alderney. There's a little town there, which is all part of the bailiwick of Guernsey.
Okay.
So the bailiwick will be Guernsey, Herm, Sark, and Alderney. Sark, there is people. There's no cars. It's a small little community. Dirt roads. Everybody rides bikes. I'm sure there's a few people that live on Herm because there is a hotel there and a little restaurant, a bar, but not many. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Bruce, thank you very much for suffering through some of my rather dim questions, but my knowledge of Guernsey is a little limited, but I'm far more educated now, and I hope that for some of the listeners. I know it might seem a little odd talking to people in very small jurisdictions, but I think it's equally important that we discuss these jurisdictions as well as the large ones because, essentially everybody matters. And as we've learned from this discussion, it is actually some of the smaller jurisdictions that I suggest could teach the bigger jurisdictions a lesson or two in process and common sense.
I agree 100%. I have firmly believed that the Channel Islands can be a beacon for sustainability and cannabis reform. and kind of, yeah, show the bigger countries, you know, how it's done. So,
Well, great. Thank you very much for being on the show.
thank you. Cheers.
Live and direct, live and I take no jive.
Legalize it. I mean, how much can a koala bear? Koala bear, koala bear. Koala bear. Barry pulls a joint out of his pocket. Bill says, great, Barry, a reefer.